Brentan Parsons of the Gold Coast Titans. And our discussion for today's chat will be everything you need to know when it comes to designing a strength and power program. So if you're an S&C coach, an aspiring S&C coach, or even for developing athletes that might be following your own program, and you're interested in learning a little bit more what it takes to train like an athlete, then make sure to get the notepad out and send in your questions as well if you're tuning in with us live. And we'll find some time, no doubt, at the end to answer those questions. But thanks for jumping on, Brendan. Really looking forward to the chat, mate.
Yep, I look forward to it too, Jack. So, hopefully, like I said before, you got hopefully people can get something interesting out of what I'm saying.
Absolutely. I'm sure they will. I guess we'll kick it off for those that aren't aware of your background, mate. Do you mind sort of starting, I guess, where you found the passion for strength and conditioning, and then your academic side and strength and conditioning roles you've had over the years?
Sure. I guess like a lot of strength and conditioning coaches, I guess I'm a little bit of a failed athlete, like everyone else who's done strength and conditioning. I was an okay rugby union player, even though I was living in Melbourne. I sort of got into strength and conditioning via that when coaches said I needed to put on size, and they were giving out strength programs for the team. And I was just sort of influenced also by bodybuilding in the 1980s when I was sort of in my formative sort of teenage years growing up. I'm really showing my age now, I guess. But muscle and fitness magazines, certainly some articles by Charles Poliquin in there, the late Charles Poliquin now. And that sort of just gave me the idea that there could be a way to add performance to athletes. I didn't really know too much about it then, and it was very much in its infancy in Australia, from what I've known. I know you've spoken to Loris, and he was around even further before that. I was working in the industry, I guess, and then from that period, I left school, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Got a job in a bank for a few years. Really decided I hated that, but I was still playing relatively high level rugby union, and I just wanted to see if I could use that part of my sporting sort of background sort of dovetail into a job that I could really enjoy, and that's when I went to university as a mature age student, 24, 25 years old, and studied a sports science degree at Vic Uni in Footscray, and that sort of gave me the passion a little bit, or maybe not the passion, more the direction of where I needed to fill in the gaps in my knowledge. And then I guess in my third year of that degree, I decided to do a sports science placement at the Victorian Institute of Sport. And that really cemented my direction of where I wanted to go as a strength and conditioning coach. And it really highlighted that there was a very large gap between my current knowledge base, which was really bodybuilding and exercises like that, and the burgeoning strength and conditioning scene, sort of slowly coming out in Australia, but sort of piggyback off a lot of the stuff that's been happening in the States for, I guess probably 30, 40 years. So I didn't even know there was a lot of research back then, and just coming into like an institute like setting with the VIS, I just really understood that there was a large gap between my knowledge of what I thought athletes were using and what athletes probably should be using.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very good. And you mentioned Loris. Are there other sort of mentors or influences that have helped shape your philosophy along the way?
Sure. Well, definitely the VIS was very formative. Back then, it had quite a dogmatic system that they like to adhere to. We were sort of known around Australia as the Swiss Ball Institute, where they really I guess a lot of their theories were more about realigning the body, about fixing problems within the systems, or proper neuromuscular function. So I learned a lot of that stuff very early on in the piece. And, I guess as a young coach, you probably go in a little bit too full on and drink the Kool-Aid, and I probably went too far down that path. But I guess in a good way, it helped formulate some of my ideas and philosophies moving forward. Also, while I was there, I also Denise Jennings, a mentor of mine, really sort of, I guess, put my sort of ideas back on track from about the early 2000s onwards, sort of steering back onto things that I knew worked beforehand. But I got a little bit sidetracked from all the postural and the muscle alignment, and we must align before we load, and all of these sort of theories that were being bandied about at that point in time. Certainly in Victoria. What else? Although not really have I integrated that much with Dan Baker, a lot of his research in the early 90s with the Broncos just sort of opened my eyes a bit to what strength and conditioning can be in a very scientific approach. And I think that was just like, oh wow, it really. I thought it was just loading up, and we're doing squats, we're doing bench, we're doing deadlifts, but no, there's actually more to this caper, and it's actually, obviously, that's evolved quite dramatically in the last 20 years that I've been involved in strength and conditioning. So that's been really interesting to see that evolve over time. I guess when I went internationally, I sort of looked more widely and read more widely, and a lot of people, I guess, in this modern age with Instagram and LinkedIn, it's a lot easier to talk with some of the leading people overseas, and certainly some of the ideas of Mike Boyle. It's sort of weird. I think my ideas were sort of developed sort of in parallel, and it seems quite similar, a lot of our ideas. Although he's written a book and far more acknowledged than me. It's just interesting that although I hadn't read any of his books beforehand, a lot of the ideas behind how he programs is what I had developed within my own sort of systems, borrowing and stealing from everyone like we do. So that was interesting. And I've always been involved in track and field. So I read a lot of Charlie Francis's stuff early on, and did a bit of training, not only by myself, integrating with my coach Steve Gaffney, but also just asking a lot of questions from track coaches when I was at the VIS, but also when I was working with my coach Steve. So that really formulated a lot of my ideas on conditioning and speed training, which I've sort of developed over time. So I really feel that to me, it's like, if you want to run fast and you want to understand conditioning, go to the people that make people run fast and do all the conditioning. So for athletes, so I thought that's the best way to go, and that's what I sort of have done, and they're sort of pulled me in all different directions, but that's how it's formulated, I guess, an overall sort of global look at the way we prepare athletes.
Yeah, love that. No stone unturned. And what about highlights, mate? Like, over your career, any particular moments or stories that spring front of mind that you're proud of?
Yeah, I guess. Well, there's so many different ones, but I guess, look, I really liked my time when I was in the AFL at your current club, actually, Melbourne. Mm-hmm. I was heading up the speed and the rehab programs, and just we had our best records for not only injury prevention, but injury reoccurrence, and we did that for 2 years in a row, until we modified some of our programs. So, no, very, very pleased about that. Obviously, the stuff I've done with China, I pretty much built a strength and conditioning program for the Shanghai Sports Institute from the ground up over 10 years. So that was quite satisfying. Built and designed like a gym facility for 3 different venues. Obviously, a few world championships and gold medals. Working with Chinese track cycling, that's been very personally satisfying. I guess another thing that I'm not too sure if many other coaches have said, I really enjoy that I mentor. A lot of people that I've been mentoring are actually working in high performance jobs in Australia and also Asia. I've got one who's got his own facility in WA, another one who's in AFL, another one's heading up a program in Hong Kong. So just great to see that a lot of the mentors I've had over the many years are out there doing good things, and that sort of gets me up and going, and I find that it's another measure of success that maybe coaches don't think about, just the wins and the losses and we won this season. But I think coaching development is an essential part of being a coach, developing the younger ones coming through.
And those mentees, were they past colleagues that you'd work with in programs, or did they reach out on their own accord for you to mentor them?
It's been a bit of both, actually. Some are past colleagues. Some are. I actually ran a mentor program at Shanghai Institute and got some Australian coaches over there, and we did an intensive mentorship for 3 to 4 months. So that was that. I'm currently got some younger mentors currently at the Gold Coast Titans. So I guess it's a real bit of both. Some have reached out. Some have been I've worked with, and some have actually advertised to come in, and obviously being of a certain standard we were looking for, certainly when I was in Shanghai, most of those were leading to jobs afterwards. So it's a great way to not only get across some of your important ideas and get them to really start thinking about their own personal philosophies, but just a good way of, I think, of paying it forward to some of the younger coaches coming through.
Absolutely, well said, mate. And no doubt they're lucky to have you in their corner. What about biggest challenges that you've faced, and what have you sort of learned, or how have you sort of grown as a coach facing those challenges?
I think I think I always wanted to be learning more and more of the technical side of things, but I think there comes a point where you become a better coach by learning the soft sciences. I think that seems to be a current theme. So I think knowing the point where the technical side is a law of diminished returns. That's certainly one point. A real basic one that we all will find out at some point in coaching: being sacked. Just understanding that it's a part of the job, and sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. That's very easy to say at the time and very tough to actually go through. But just understand that being sacked doesn't necessarily reflect on you as a coach or the performance team that you're with. So that was definitely a challenge, and probably the biggest one I did was, and I'm not too sure if Laura said it heading over to China, the cultural differences. I guess to compare to Australia, probably 180 degrees difference. Like from an Australian coaching point of view, I guess we're an aggressive culture. If I have a problem with another coach or an athlete, we're we're not shy in coming forward and just saying that that's the problem. The cultural issues in China, you couldn't do that because of the face-saving culture. So it was quite difficult to sometimes get the cut and thrust of what I want to get across in the sessions. And I know we have to do it at nearly every organisation we go to, but like having to prove yourself time and time again, like I would go to a new sport in China and it's just like they're not going to listen to you until they can really see A, that you're giving a value added, and B, you're going to help them win. So once and this is what we're in the winning business, and if we're not winning, we're not in business. But if in that environment, it was very cutthroat, and if they couldn't see that you were helping them win, or you couldn't provide that stimulus to help them to solve some problems, to allow them to win more games, they would just cut you off at the knees, and you'd have to go find another team to work with. So yeah, just I think cultural differences were a big one in China. It took me a long time to do some of the changes. I went in there as a relatively young coach wanting to change the world, and I don't care who you are, whether you go to China, America, the UK, India, you can't walk in and say everything you're doing is poor. No one wants to hear that. So it's how do we sell that message of how do we turn the ship around, I guess, to get rid of some of the structures that are really, I guess, pulling our performance down and being very detrimental to our performance, and how can we change that to just right that ship in the right direction, but understanding that process is probably a 18-month to 2-year process rather than a 3 to 6 month process. I think cultural change anywhere is difficult. Whether it's AFL, rugby league, or in an Olympic sports setting. So yeah, that was a difficult one, but
And that would be advice. There you go.
Sorry, what was that, Joe?
I was just going to say, would that be your advice for someone that's changing? So if they've worked in Australia and they're going to a new country, a new environment, perhaps a new sport that they haven't worked in, take your time, focus on some key areas of the program and nail down on that, and getting buy-in first, and then start to layer things in over time.
100%. Don't be in a hurry to change things, because it's a lot of people. It doesn't matter whether it's overseas or here. A lot of people are very proud of their programs, and too much change too quickly can not only destabilize the athletes, but can destabilize the organisation as well. So change is good, but just the implementation of that change is. We need to be mindful as coaches to not try to rush things through without actually thinking through the ramifications of those changes.
Yeah, very good. Oh, we'll dive straight into the key topic. I guess to kick it off, what would you say are the sort of key fundamentals from your point of view when it comes to designing an effective strength and power program for, I guess, field-based team athletes, your rugbies and football codes?
Sure. I guess it sort of goes back to my philosophy. I like to get the structural fundamentals right. I think they're very important. What does the structural fundamentals mean? Because I'm sure a lot of people say it and throw it around, but what I'm talking about is the basic push, pull, the overhead press, the overhead pull, squat, lunge, the hip hinge, your jumping, your landing, all your basic movement competencies. They're what we need to work on really to get that foundation of strength and power. If we don't have that, it's like building your house on sand. There's going to be a lot of power leakage. So really big on the structural stuff and understanding that each different structural thing that you're trying to make more resilient, make more stronger, has its own different timeline and will work at a different frequency, and each athletes will adjust to the working load differently. So just understanding that, yes, we've got to get those basic strength and movement competencies going, but understanding that they don't just they don't just flow on a very sequential time frame. You might be doing a hinge for 6 months. You might be doing a basic press for 3 months. It really is dependent not on actual time, but the actual competency of the movement and what you feel is necessary progression to go from, say, a basic push-up in a press to I don't know, so a dumbbell press into a bench press into some power throws, or what are each individual timelines and benchmarks. And I think that's up to, there's so many different factors, but it's definitely up to the coach, but it's definitely up to the athletes. And pardon me, just goes back to, I guess, pretty much what I do with all my programming, whether I come into a new team or whether I come in pardon me, to a new athlete. It's what is the most important thing that we need to do now, and that really drives what we need to do in that next block. Pardon me, just need to get a quick drink.
Go for it.
So I guess also on a lot of that initial phase, there's a lot of talking. I'm talking with the coaches, I'm talking with the athletes, I'm talking with the medical staff. I need to know their training history. I need to know some of the positives and negatives of that athlete. From the coaches, what do we need to improve? What are the key performance indicators that you measure them on for this sport, and how can we make them better? Is it an on-field thing? Is it a technical thing? Is it in the gym? Is it a limitation of their? Is it something medical that we can't get by? So it's having a full qualitative discussion with all the departments, and trying to get the full breadth of information so we can make the right decisions going forward. Once we have all that, I like to do a movement screen, which is one that I've personally developed. There's many different movement screens out there, and I'm not saying that mine is the best. All I'm saying is it's something that I've developed over time, and I think with a lot of the movement screens that are out there, it's which one sucks the least rather than one which works the best. I've just found that my one sucks the least, because I don't think there's anything perfect for any of these things. It's something that you feel that is meaningful, that you can check and recheck with your athletes. And the one that I've developed, borrows from other ones and borrows from some of the key competencies that I look for in my structural elements as well. So I like to do the movement, but I also like to do a musculoskeletal screen. Nothing crazy, but just a basic one of just muscles around the hips, also muscles around the shoulder. What's the calf like? Tight, facilitated, and just to see where those are at, and that's borrowed pretty much from my time at the Victorian Institute of Sport. We always would have a musculoskeletal screen, and that would drive some of the medical aspects, and then we could do a movement capacity. So I guess like all strength coaches, I'm stealing, I'm borrowing, but that sort of drives, I guess, the basis of what we need, and then that drives, I guess, and this is what I call strength and conditioning. It's pretty much problem solving. We're athletic problem solving, and it's how much of this do I do at this point in time, because our competition is 3 months away, 6 months away, 1 year away, or this athlete is developmental, their main competitions are 2 years away. So we can do, for them, they need to do, X, Y, Z. That's going to help them be the athlete they are 2 to 3 years from now. We might have another one who we're working with who has, ongoing knee issues. That it's not enough to stop them playing, but they need to get up every week. So they're going to have a totally different program. One's more basic, structural. For the knee one, it's going to make sure that he can just get by on a week-to-week place until we get him to the end of the year and maybe has a clean out or something like that can actually fix the problem. So how do I program? That's pretty much it. We've got the basis where that drives from, like I said, from coaches, from the medical, from structural, from musculoskeletal. That ties in with hierarchy of needs, and I try to individualize my programs as much as possible. Obviously, within a large team environment, it's difficult. I'm sure as you understand that. But I still try to have some individual elements within that program that's more specific to them. But if we can't do that specific individual program, what we will do, and I'm sure this is done by numerous coaches and other clubs, we try to put them into buckets of different like-minded athletes, guys that need to put on size and are young, guys that are intermediate, guys that are structurally poor and just need to pretty much do structural stuff the whole time and can't really work on power. And then you've got guys that are great and need to express that power. So within each team, there will be, themes that everyone will do, and then there will be less and more depending on what they really need to help them develop as an athlete, but also being mindful that they need to play the sport as well. So we can't always have time off and just worry about, we need to get them stronger. Sometimes, we need to walk and chew gum at the same time. So we've got to do many things. And sometimes, we're not really expressing strength and power as we would always like to be. We're mainly going in a rehab focus. So, yeah, I've probably said a lot and not said much, but hopefully you can get a bit of an idea on what I'm trying to suggest that I do. I'm more than happy to go into any depth of that if you want to.
Yeah, that's great. It's a really good overview and a great place to start, just to give context into, I guess, your process and thinking behind planning your programming and what you value. So that's great. Brendan, really appreciate the detail there. I guess to kick it off with the structural fundamentals, if you don't mind, like going into, like you said before, allowing it, I guess it sounds like they need to earn the right before you go into the explosive, more advanced based lifting, which is what the athletes all want to do. They all want to be more powerful, but why is it important to build that structural fundamentals first before expressing power? What have you seen when that's gone wrong, or conversely, when it's done well? How does that pay dividends, I guess, for a long career?
Oh, look, it's. I think it's just so important that we can get that, that sort of work done before they come into that high performance environment, whether it's rugby league, AFL, rugby union. That before they hit that high performance sporting environment, I think sometimes we probably do get a bit excited. We like to get the gym wear on and we want to hit some numbers, and that's all great. But I think we need to understand the context. So I'm very big on a lot of the running sports. We need to be single-legged strength. It's so important. So not only just the single-legged strength, but the relationship between the hip and the knee and the ankle, making sure that they're strong, making sure we've got really strong but also functional glute medius they can also very important for stabilisation of the knee, very important for preventing the large of the structural knee issues. The relationship between the hips and the shoulder girdle, I think, is really important. Make sure that there's good flow there. So I do like an overhead squat as like a movement competency test, but I like it with a 20 kilo bar to actually put them into a loaded capacity, just to see what happens when the load's put on the shoulder girdle and how that relates to the hips. What else do we like to do? We like to work a lot on shoulder external rotation, as I guess a lot of the theories that we came through with some of the structural stuff in VIS is a lot of sport, and we all know this happens in front of us. It's a lot of internal rotation, not only of the shoulders but of the hips. So just making sure we're working strong on shoulder external rotators, from an isometric, getting basic function, and then into movement, as well as through hips, external rotation through the same thing. Just making sure we're strong through those muscles, so we can have not only good structures in the gym for jumping, landing, changing direction, and that's the same thing we want to do with being stiff, solid in our sprinting outside. So I guess there are just a couple of the basic, not only movement screening, but they form a part of the structural strength moving forward. Be that they might be quite bad, and I don't mind coming out saying a lot of the Titans guys, when I first came, could barely hold a broomstick overhead and do an overhead squat. But you can only do what your body can allow it to do. But pretty much now, say 6 months down the track, all of the athletes can overhead squat 20 kilo, if not more. But that 20 kilo is the basis, and then that allows us to move on to other things. So once a competency is reached, that allows a lot more paths to open up in, say, with overhead squat, so overhead strength, but overhead strength with good structural integrity.
So you mentioned individualization earlier as well, and the constraints that a coach will have, a lead strength and conditioning or strength and power coach will have, is obviously managing a big group and trying to find that balance between what's practical and sustainable, I guess, for the coach, but also with the individual in mind. It sounded like there was like a size group, a developing athlete development group for the younger athletes, and a structural group, and then more those that are ready for explosive training. Like within your screening as well, for those that I guess the coaches have identified from a performance point of view who needs size and who needs power and that, and then you're taking into account the medical information. Is there some athletes that have their own sort of needs where they might be in a grey area, or do you tend to be able to within those four, do you think you can pretty safely meet the needs of the athletes?
Look, that'll really depend on the team. Look, you probably could fit most of them within that four, but look, even within that, I've got maybe two that they're what you would call, I guess, basket cases. They're I guess groin issue guys that need a totally different program, can't really express much strength and power, so it's purely structural. But we still keep the structural side of things, but we still can maintain a lot of the other things that they still need. They still need strength. They still need a little bit of upper body strength and power, because rugby league's a brutal sport. You've got to have 110, 115, 20 kilo blokes running into you. It's mass versus mass. You still need to create that. So we'll have those buckets, but we'll also have there'll always be outliers, and that there always has been within all the teams I've worked with. So there's always going to be, that guy's just been bashed up over years, say in the contact sports, or there's always going to be, say, even when I was in track cycling with the Chinese national team, some athletes that just can't squat. They've just had so much back issues over many years. So we got to find other ways to get very high level of strength and power into them, but without a lot of axial loading. So like I said before, it is large scale sort of problem solving with humans, and it's a matter of trying to get the best for every athlete with the buckets, but understanding that we will need to do maybe some different things on top of that to look after the guys who actually need a little bit more love than everyone else.
Yeah, sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. And the musculoskeletal screen, from a medical point of view, do you mind going into a bit more detail in how that guides your prescription? Is that like prehab exercises they do at the end of their strength and power program, or is it does it guide warm ups, accessory lifts?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I guess the screening, like I said, is just borrowed off what the VIS used to do with the physios, and that was very comprehensive. The one I do is it's a hamstring test, piriformis test, Thomas test for the hip flexor, QL, shoulder internal, external rotation, and calf. Just seeing what's happening with all of those, and that's just subjective on a 5-level scale, and obviously each sport that I've worked with has a different range that athletes need to be. So once again, it's subjective for the range I need currently for rugby league players, and then it's also subjective for the athlete that I'm working with. But within that subjectivity is, I guess, I've done it over many years, and I find it helps me and it gives a bit of clarity for me to program. In the past, I like to do it after sessions, and I actually saw some research recently that actually confirms that that's an actually good way to do it. I couldn't give you the research off the top of my head, sorry.
That's all good, mate.
But yeah, a lot of that's confirmed about what I've been doing for a while. So we would normally have like a maybe 15-20 minute stretch after, or a 15-20 minute sort of period after strength, where we can work on increasing range in certain muscles, or doing some basic sort of corrective exercises. I think maybe corrective exercises and prehabby stuff works better before a session if you're going to increase range. I believe that works better after a session, after a strength session, or ideally what I've tried to do before is have a separate time where that's all we're focusing on. If it's increasing range about certain joints, once again we'll have buckets of certain guys who need very similar things. So it might be, I don't know, tight piriformis, tight glute max, tight hamstrings, and we spend 15 to 20 minutes just on different ways to not only maybe partner stretching, maybe fascial stretching, maybe some rolling release, really depending on mixing it up and just keeping it I guess interesting, because it's probably the first thing that goes in most programs. The stretching, the athletes sometimes fail to see a lot of the benefit from it. Maybe they can see it short term, but can sometimes fail to see the efficacy long term. So it's just about just trying to lead those sessions rather than just saying, oh, you need to stretch X, Y, and Z. I think there becomes more of a focus if not only the prehab is led and really driven, I think that can become a part of the strength and power program and lead into a strength session. I've done that before. I'm not currently doing that, but hopefully we can move towards that in the future. And those after strength session recoveries, as it were, I think they're pretty important, even just for a 10 to 15 minute stretch, roll, and then, on their way.
And if you're, I guess, for the coaches listening in, that perhaps either always done it before or always done it, or maybe others have always done it after, the fact you've done both, do you, when you go with one philosophy over the other, does it change your tempo, your prescription of exercises, or how long you hold stretches for, or even the method that you talked about, partner stretching, fascial stretches? Talk us through that. Does it influence where it fits in, or does it not really matter where it is before a lift or after?
Look, if you asked me 15 years ago, I would say, look, it really is important about how you do it. Now, probably I'm not so dogmatic in my approach about how things should be done. But look, at the same time, I don't think we need to go very aggressive stretching before a strength session. I just don't think. I mean, the research sort of supports that. It doesn't really. It's not a great part of the warm up. I think it's a good way to relax, and I think it's a better part of the cool down. And I think more corrective type exercises, and I guess roller activation, I think, is more pertinent pre strength power sessions rather than after. So look, sometimes as coaches, we've got to get it in when we can get it in. But in saying that, there's how I would like to structure things up, and then there's always the daily reality. So I'd probably prefer to get it in than not, but I'd prefer to probably go, if I was going to go for some more aggressive stretching like the fascial and the partner stuff, I would prefer to do that after a strength power session.
Sure. Thanks, mate. And from the flip side, I guess, for the athletes listening in, what advice would you give around goal setting when it comes to your strength and power? Is it best to have weekly targets, a daily target for that session, or more bigger picture, monthly, sort of quarterly goals?
Look, it really depends where you are as an athlete, and it really depends on, I guess, if you're in a competition phase or if you're in a off-season phase. But I really think, I think, I know I'm harping about it on this all day. It really comes back to what's most important now, and that hierarchy of needs that you really need to fix. Not only, and you should know that as an athlete, even if you're a park or even part-time amateur athlete, you should still know the things that you need to work on and get better on, and you should be able to convey that to your strength coach, or convey that to what you're trying to achieve with your strength power program. And if that is, say, you're for a 100-meter runner and you really need to work on the first 5 meters of acceleration, well then that means you need to you might have structural issues, but you really need to work on that starting strength power in that first 5 meters, which is going to give you the most bang for your buck, because that's what is most important now. If you're leading into an off season, well, then maybe working on some of those other issues, and maybe structural or long-term strength things that you need to work on, they're probably much more important than going through that really strong cycle of power. So understand where you are within your journey as an athlete, but your journey within the season as an athlete, and understand what needs to get fixed, or not needs to be fixed, but there's some shortcomings, and then understand, having talked with a good coach to prepare realistic goals, but also benchmarks along the way that you can check off, be them strength, power, metrics, structural, whatever.
And from obviously we've discussed a fair bit from the physical point of view. How does sort of the psychological, mental aspects influence your, I guess, delivery for a session? Perhaps maybe they've been coming off a couple of hard losses, or even if there's been some longer meetings and you feel like the energy's down. Is there anything differently that you've sort of used over the years to help engage the athletes when they're going through a bit of a challenging spot?
Yeah, no, I really think that's a great question. I really think it's an underutilized element of being a coach or being a strength and power performance coach. Um, it is a roller coaster. Team sports really are, and I think sometimes we can get caught up on that roller coaster, and it's just not good for us, and it's not good for the athletes to be constantly either high or low. So, I mean, I really came to that conclusion after working a lot with rehab and found that the stages of grieving are pretty much the same as the the stages in rehab. There's 7 stages, whether you're going through, um, acceptance of the injury. First you're in denial, then you're accepting it, then you move towards understanding, and then at the end there's you're moving into full training. So I think we need to understand that as coaches. Sometimes we need to be that soft ear that the athletes need to hear. Sometimes we need to be a bit of a harder sounding board. So that's what I try to do in a more rehabilitative setting, to be that sounding board, to pretty much mimic where they're at within their rehab. For the main group, if they're coming a little bit flat, sometimes we'll do something. We'll put on. Everyone wears a basketball shirt day or shit shirt day, or something different, just to take everyone out of their. They're always thinking about themselves. What about thinking about something a little bit greater, like the team? Or getting different athletes to take certain aspects of maybe the strength power warm up, or just looking for different ideas from different athletes. Just like you said, when you need to read the room and things are a little bit flat, what can we do different? So, I mean, there's many different ways to go about that, but yeah, they're just a couple of things that I've used recently, and sometimes we just go, you know what, look, we're just going to knock this session on the head. That's it.
Yeah, smash it out.
And that probably gets the greatest applause, but it really depends on the situation, the time, and what's been going on with the team.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess what would be for those developing athletes listening in, some common mistakes that you often find with I guess new draft picks that come to the club, or players that haven't been exposed to strength and conditioning? What are some sort of important aspects to sort of grasp early on in your career to sort of set yourself up with successful habits?
Well, I guess is don't be in a hurry to get where you need to be. If someone says, if a quality strength and conditioning coach says it's going to take 6 to 8 months of XYZ, it really is going to take that much time. So don't feel the need. And I've seen this happen many a time for athletes to go do their extra sessions on the side just to top up, and then next thing you know, they're coming in and my shoulder's hurting now, or I think did a little bit too much plyometrics. It's like, well, just put faith in the process. Don't put blind faith, obviously, in the process, but make sure that you listen to what the strength coach is saying. Don't just go ahead of yourself and start going down different paths and start shopping for different answers, different ideas, because you'll always find the answers, but you probably always won't find the right answers. So we certainly see that a lot with young athletes. They're shopping for what's going to be the magical exercise to get them 6 months further down the track than they currently are. So there's just no shortcuts. And if you're looking for shortcuts, you'll find them, and then they'll manifest themselves as injuries, most likely.
Very good. Well, I feel like we've covered plenty of information when it comes to strength and power programming. I've taken 2 pages of notes, and no doubt the listeners have as well. So I really appreciate your time and just discussing both stories and experiences if you have, but also sharing your methodologies and principles and how to apply it to a program. Is there anything that we haven't touched on, Brendan, that you'd like to, wrap up the topic?
There's a lot more I could talk about, but I think maybe that's for another time. It's a lot of China sort of stories, and just different ways of training strength and power athletes. I just wanted to say I've was asked to help author a chapter on speed for the NSCA on strength and power for track cycling. So if you want to learn a little bit more about what I do, a little bit more depth, that will be coming out, I think, later this year. So
fantastic.
It's Speed Second Edition. So you can either use it as a doorstop, or you can actually get something information out of it. So it's up to you.
Yeah, I love that. Congratulations, mate. That's an awesome achievement. Well, last 3 questions from me. Mindful of the time, we've nearly gone to 60 minutes, so appreciate it. But in your work life, have you got any pet peeves, anything that sort of fires you up from an industry point of view, or things that athletes do, or other S&Cs?
There's obviously industry one, but we could probably spend a whole program on that. But I think I touched on it before. Just athletes, coaches, everyone looking for 1 or 2 exercises that we can prescribe that's going to be a magic cure. Mm-hmm. I've had that so many times in different sports and different places around the world. It was a big one in China. They were looking for the magic cure. There's just nothing out there. It's you got to understand that it's a structural process, and that's one pet peeve. The other one is people that say core. We really don't know what they're talking about, but I could go on to that all day. That's enough of that.
Yeah. And favourite way to spend your day off?
Look, I like to get into a bit of yoga, Bikram yoga. Been doing that for a while, and now that I'm on the Gold Coast up here, really enjoying the beaches and just getting out and having a swim in the surf. Really enjoying that. Sometimes, get out on the bike and do some Ks, but haven't been doing that much lately. Been a bit lazy, but like to do that on my days off.
Yeah, get active. And we're obviously recording this in the middle of July of 2023. What's on the horizon for you, Brendan? What are you excited about for the rest of the year, mate?
Well, I guess from me, because I've been overseas a long time, I'm just enjoying being back in Australia and good food and around family and friends, and I'm really enjoying being not cold in a winter, in a winter-based sport. So I'm in shorts and t-shirts. It's the middle of winter, so I'm
the good life.
Yeah. So enjoying that at the moment. But in strength and conditioning, really looking forward to. Like I said, we're getting a new coach in 2024. So always looking forward to the opportunities that. Coming with a new coach with obviously a really good reputation.
Yeah, fantastic. And for those that have follow-up questions, is there a best place to get in contact, either through direct message on socials or?
I'm not super active on socials, but I definitely will look at it every now and then. I'm on Instagram at BPSNC. I'm on Twitter at the same place, BPSNC, and I'm on LinkedIn under my name. I'm more than happy to go through anything anyone wants to talk about, or any questions, or pretty much anything, Jack. So, yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah, for those listening, we'll add the links to Brendan's socials on the show notes, so you can easily click it and connect through there. And thanks again, Brendan, for tuning in and sharing with us all your knowledge, mate. Really appreciate it. And it's a fascinating topic, and one no doubt that whether you're an athlete listening in or even a parent of a young athlete, or of course high performance staff. You've got some key takeaways and gems all the way through. So thank you for everyone that's tuned in as well. If you've looking forward to our next chat, it's actually Jonas Dodo that's just been booked in. That's next week, the 2nd of August at 2:30 p.m. Australian Standard Time. So I look forward to seeing you guys then. And make sure to listen to the full recording if you tuned in with us with Brendan halfway through or 3/4 through and you missed the start. Make sure to catch it. You can find that on YouTube before we release it on our podcast in the next couple of weeks. Thanks, guys.